Good evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about copyright and understanding the basics of copyright law for students and educators. So today's learning objectives. 1. Students will know the foundational terms of copyright law and their meanings. 2. Students will differentiate between acceptable and unacceptable use of copyrighted material. And 3. Students will correctly identify examples of protected and unprotected copyright material. The success criteria for today's lesson is 1. Students will take notes during the lesson about copyright law and fair use. 2. Students will complete an assessment after the lecture to check for understanding. And 3. Students will demonstrate an understanding of copyright law by responding to hypothetical examples. So first let's talk about the purpose of copyright law. Copyright law is designed to promote the freedom and exchange of information. The law creates protections for intellectual property to encourage creators to openly share and disseminate information. With basic protections in place, creators can comfortably share their work while knowing that a legal recourse is in place for those who may try to steal or profit from their work. Creators have a limited monopoly on their works for a specific period of time. Creators can also sell or exchange their rights to their work. So here are a few common examples of copyright violations, just so we have some perspective here. Downloading music or movies without paying for them, distributing copies of movies or music made from a single purchase, using copyrighted music while streaming or producing a video, pirating content or software from the internet, photoshopping images to display on a company website, creating merchandise with copyrighted images, designs, or characters, streaming live sports through third-party mirroring websites, improper citation or acknowledgement of a copyright holder, or printed copyrighted material on clothing for distribution or sale. Legal penalties of copyright violations. Now keep in mind these are hardly ever applied for education, but their violations can be more serious if there are some monetary damages involved. So first, copyright infringers are subject to paying damages incurred through the violation of the copyright. Each instance of copyright infringement can result in between $200,000 and $150,000 in damages. Copyright infringers are subject to paying all attorney fees and court costs if there is a litigation. The court can issue an injunction to stop infringement acts. The court can collect and impound illegal works. And lastly, a violator can be imprisoned for up to 5 years. So, copyright does give the creator exclusive rights, and they have exclusive rights to do what? Reproduction. Creators have the right to reproduce a work. Distribution. Creators have the right to selectively distribute their work. Derivative works. Creators have the right to create derivative works or to expand on their original work. Public performance. Creators have a right to authorize the public performance of a work. Or public display. Copyright owners have the rights to display or approve display of their works in public. These are all of the kinds of work that are eligible for copyright protection. Literary works, musical works, dramatic works, pantomimes and choreographic works, pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works, motion pictures and other audiovisual works, sound recordings, or architectural works. There are a few limitations of copyright. These are things that might prevent somebody from infringing on your copyright. The first is fair use. Pertinent copyrighted material can be repeated for the purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, or research. The second is if material is in the public domain. Certain works are open to free public use without consideration of copyright. These works are added to the public domain by the creator or by the expiration of a copyright on the material. Unprotected information. Information such as facts, lists, and government documents cannot be protected under copyright law. And ideas. Ideas themselves cannot be copyrighted. However, the expression of an idea can be. For instance, the concept of Christmas cannot be copyrighted. However, a Christmas story can be. Things you cannot copyright: processes, machines, articles, manufacturers, composition of matter, slogans, symbols, and designs, ideas, facts, or data. Copyright law and education. So this is important because this is where copyright applies to us as students and teachers. There are caveats in copyright law to allow the use of copyrighted material in educational institutions to promote learning. These exceptions are designed for nonprofit learning institutions like public schools and libraries. Copyrighted material used in instruction for these nonprofit institutions falls under fair use. Educators and students who use copyrighted material are expected to credit sources properly, use material fairly, and not commercialize the material. Copyright laws are more lenient on material utilized for educational purposes. Here are a few rules about the public domain. If a work is published in the United States before 1926, it is in the public domain. Works published between 1926 and 1989, without notice or renewal of copyright, are also in the public domain. All works after March 1989 are protected under copyright law until 70 years after the creator's death. Works of corporate authorship, or commissioned works, will enter the public domain after 95 years from publication or 120 years from creation. Here are a few rules of fair use that you can follow. There is no specific definition for what unfair use of copyrighted material is. Rather, certain factors are considered to determine whether or not work was used fairly. Factor 1. The purpose and character of the use. What is it for? Factor 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. What is the copyrighted work? Factor 3. The amount of work used. Was it just a segment of a material, or was it an entire series or documentary? Factor 4. The effect of the use on potential market or value of the work. This is probably the most important factor because it's concerning, is this use preventing the copyright holder from making money? Fair use and education. Copyrighted materials can be used for students and educators for academic purposes. Students and educators can use a checklist to assess the fair use factors from the previous slide. Students and educators should properly acknowledge a work's creator and source. Students and educators should limit the use of copyrighted material to pertinent information. Showing relevant clips for a lesson or project is preferable to showing an entire work. Educators and students should not earn monetary compensation from the use of copyrighted material. That's the biggest no-no of them all. Plagiarism and copyright. Plagiarism of a work can violate copyright law. Plagiarism of a work can also not violate copyright law, for instance, if it's in the public domain. Plagiarism is a concept related to academic integrity, while copyright is a federal law. Copyright law is limited and has specific rules and exceptions. Plagiarism is unethical, but not illegal in most situations. Improperly cited material can constitute plagiarism and copyright infringement. Plagiarism alone is not likely to result in copyright infringement. Copyright law and research. For research purposes, the research should be private and non-commercial. Copyrighted material used for research should meet the standards of fair use. The research can only use copyrighted material for their own use. Unprotected information, such as facts, lists, and government documents, can also be used in research material without violating copyright law. Researchers should be careful to cite their sources and acknowledge the use of any copyrighted material. Know your copyrights. It can seem intimidating to process all of this information. Understanding copyright and the rules of fair use will prevent you from enduring the legal ramifications of copyright infringement. Almost all material created for the purposes of education are protected under fair use. However, streamers, influencers, and content creators should all be familiar with copyright laws and the doctrine of fair use. Copyright violations on platforms like Twitch or YouTube can result in the termination of your channel or demonetization of your work. If you intend to make money from creating content, it is extremely important that you fully understand copyright laws. Once money is involved, the potential for lawsuits increases significantly. Here are the references for my slides today, and we'll move on to the next part of the lesson.